Welcome into Zollipod. I am your host, Preston Moore. I'm joined by my co-host, Carson Terrell. Carson, how are you doing?
Doing good. It's spooky season. I feel like the weather's been so hot that it doesn't feel like spooky season, and then we've had like a couple cold days here in the Midwest, and I'm like, now I'm into it and it's almost over. So I'm kind of sad that Halloween is almost gone.
It literally, here in Amarillo, it literally I don't even think it's gotten cold yet. It got brisk for like a week, but it's
Did you have to put a windbreaker on?
Yeah. I put on a light jacket like 3 days out of the month, but it's October 26th. It's like not even cold yet. I think it was 90 today. I could be wrong, but it was at high 80s, I think, and it's been that way. So it hasn't really felt much like spooky season yet. But I've been excited to record this podcast with you because I knew that we were going to be talking about spooky season, spooky movies, everything spooky. And I've been looking forward to it for that reason alone, because you know a lot more about horror than I know. I think that's safe to say.
Yeah, and it's funny because I am still a bit of a horror rookie, honestly. Like we're going to get into it, but I think we both came to horror very late in our lives, or came around to horror, I should say. You know, obviously, horror movies have been such a cultural phenomenon forever, but just in terms of like being interested in them, enjoying them, and then like actively seeking them out, I feel like have been very different phases of my life where, and so it's just great to sort of pull up our list of like favorite horror movies right now and get to talk about some of the things we love about horror and sort of our start with horror. Because I know mine's just kind of funny of like me it was just this thing I totally rejected in my childhood. And it's so funny to see now that I'm like, just like the biggest Jordan Peele fan, for example, or like all these different things where I'm like going out in theaters to see the latest horror movie, and middle school me would be like absolutely terrified.
Absolutely.
But it's such a cool genre to dive into. So kind of to just jump right into it, we wanted to talk about sort of our start with horror, and then later in this episode, after we talk about some of our favorite horror movies and sort of our journey into the horror genre, we're going to review a movie that we both have not seen, and I'm very excited to talk about that. So let's try not to talk about that until the end.
Yeah.
But Preston, how did you sort of come into the horror genre? Any early memories or early movies that you couldn't go to sleep after, that sort of thing? I know everyone has their specific like thing. Maybe it was your Lion King
terrifying movie.
Scar.
Yeah. It's interesting. Actually, like my first, I guess, movie that like terrified me, like my first movie that really like left me, kept me up at night, gave me nightmares, was Jumanji. The original Jumanji scared me so bad when I was a little kid. And it's not even a horror movie, but it scared me so bad. And I just didn't get into horror for a long time. Like, I mean, a long time. I categorically refused to watch horror movies. And even today, like, I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to go see Five Nights at Freddy's because I don't care. It's not getting great reviews, and I don't care about it. And so the only horror movies that even I see now are the ones that I can trust are going to be probably pretty good and that I'm probably going to really enjoy, and trust that other people have recommended who I trust. So that took a long time. I refused to watch any horror for the majority of my life up until about 2018, I want to say. I was old. I was 19 already. I mean, it wasn't like whenever I got to high school, I got into it, because I feel like that's kind of the age when a lot of people who didn't get into it in their childhood will get into it in high school, because it just, they're of the age where they can kind of stomach that content a little bit better. But, I did not get into it until a lot later. Even now, I feel almost like a hypocrite even being on a podcast episode centered around horror because of how little horror I've seen.
You must face your fears, Preston.
I have since I have since in the last 5 years or so, I've watched a handful of horror movies, and what really got me into horror was Jordan Peele. I watched Get Out, and I loved it. I just absolutely loved it. It was a combination of two or three movies. It was Get Out. It was 2019's It. I really was infatuated with that movie. And then Us, Jordan Peele's Us. Those three movies were sort of my initial foray into horror. That, and then I believe I watched Hereditary at some point along the lines as well at that time. And so seeing those movies that are more than just cheap jump scares, movies that are, going to keep you on the edge of your seat for a long time. And yeah, they'll probably have 2 or 3 jump scares along the way, but at the end of the day, they're just good storytelling. And they have something to say about the world in a lot of ways. I'm referencing Jordan Peele mostly because that's what really got me into horror more than anything. But it led to me watching some other horror movies in the past couple of years that I wouldn't have gone to the theater to watch otherwise. Bodies, Bodies, Bodies comes to mind immediately. One of my favorite movies of the year. I love that movie. The Black Phone, Last Night in Soho, the Quiet Place films. These movies are movies that I probably wouldn't have seen had I not been introduced to horror through a film like Get Out, where I watched it and I could see it and say, okay, this movie is a really good movie and it's a horror movie, and those exist. And I think that I just needed that kind of awakening in that sense of learning, like, hey, there are good horror movies out there that are not, they don't just simply exist to make you jump. They don't simply exist to make your heart rate go a little bit faster. That's the kind of stuff I don't like in horror. But whenever I started to get introduced to other horror movies that were much more than cheap jump scares is when I started to get a little bit more into the genre and a little bit more interested in the genre. Carson, you also have a similar, I guess, timeline with horror. I guess when it comes to not really wanting to watch it for a long time, for a large majority of our lives, and a lot of kids did watch horror back in the day.
Yeah, and it's interesting talking to people of like, I talked to a lot of people of horror was kind of like their rebellious genre. It's like, okay, we're gonna go out and like sneak into a horror movie, or that sort of era. Or for me, it was like being the kid at the sleepover that didn't want to watch the horror movie and yet was just sort of subjugated to it. And
I hated that. I would leave. Worst. I would like not watch the movie. I would be like, all right, I'm going to go into another room. Do you guys have like a video? Do you have Smash Bros in the other room? Because I'll go in there. Do you have Mario Kart? Do you have anything else I can do? That's what I would do.
I vividly remember being forced to watch Insidious for the first time. And that movie really still freaks me out to this day. I think James Wan directed it, and obviously his impact on horror is over several franchises and several different just sort of evolutions of the genre. But anyways, that movie freaked me out, and I remember forcing some of my friends to stay up and watch a different movie with me after to like sort of chase it down and be like, no, I can't go to bed with that memory of the creepy guy from Insidious and just that whole concept. For me, it was always like anything that took place in like a house was what really terrified me, because I'm like, it wasn't like the dark or anything or like a devil or a specific monster. It was like always the fact that it like would take place in a house. Like the most terrifying thing in Insidious to me is when their door flings open and like they have no idea why, and their house alarm is just going on and off, and or like things talking through the baby monitor, and you just hear like demonic voices, and like all that stuff just creeped me out. And so yeah, that's one of those early horror memories that I have of just like, okay, I don't think this is for me. I can't see why people enjoy this. Why would I subjugate myself to freak me out for like a week on end and just constantly have it be on mind?
Yeah.
But luckily, I sort of eventually grew out of that phase. I don't remember any specific, other than maybe a couple of times in high school going to see some like horror movies that were more of the jump scare kind. Because we kind of grew up in an era where that became more popular, I think, in terms of like building out those franchises that could make a lot of money and be like events for like jump scare people around like Halloween, obviously, in the fall. But also we saw a lot of different, you know, evolutions in the genre in those franchises, you know, like Saw, Scream, all those different things have evolved over the years. But really, I'm trying to think now to like what really got me into horror was probably when I started really getting into film and watching stuff in film school like The Shining, or watching other, like you said, like other current movies. Like one that comes to mind is I went and saw Possessor in theaters. It's a 2020 movie directed by Brandon Cronenberg, and that movie still terrifies me. There's other movies that, like you had mentioned, like they're horror movies, but they also, you know, make you think about things. Like I think about something like M. Night Shyamalan's Old, or even Last Night in Soho to an extent. And lots of other movies have sort of carved out their sort of different niche of what kind of story they want. It's not just a jump scare movie. And, you know, A Quiet Place is like you have the family drama, the family camaraderie, and then you have, you know, this post-apocalyptic alien scenario. And so there's all these different things that I started getting into, and it's just been fun to actually experience horror movies as they've come out. But I think I've had more fun going back and I think you're going to eventually get on this track too, of like watching the original Halloween, watching the original Scream. Like there's so much lore that like it's so fun to just catch up on, and I don't feel like pressured to do it. Like that's one of the cool things about horror is like I feel like horror fans are very chill and they just want everybody to experience like these cool movies. It's not like snobby or prestigious or anything, even when these movies can, you know, be the caliber of like a Jordan Peele movie, like Oscar nominated movies. But yeah, it's just been a fun experience. And I'm trying to think like recently of one of my favorite horror movie going experiences. I know you had mentioned a couple that you had been to. Bodies is really fun.
Great movie. I love that movie so much. I really do.
Again, just a showcase of what like all the different ways you can approach horror. I mean, it's literally comedy, but like horror at the same time, sort of campy, sort of. I mean, there's just so much fun. It could have been like felt like an SNL skit, but it doesn't.
Right.
In the best ways, and I think that's why that movie is so fun. Another movie I think about constantly is the latest Invisible Man. I don't know if you've seen that yet. If you haven't seen it,
I haven't.
It is terrifying. One of my favorite openings and a couple of my favorite horror scenes in that movie, like the way they evolved the Invisible Man, because that goes back to all like the classic, you know, black and white horror movies,
right,
and all the old Universal monster movies, that sort of thing. Just one of my favorite theater going experiences with horror. If you haven't seen that movie, it's so good.
Yeah.
But yeah, any other movies, Preston, that have really impressed you so far? Or maybe what's like next on your list that you have been told to watch, and maybe I can sort of riff if I've seen it and tell you about it.
I mean, what have I not been told to watch in horror? There's so much.
That's true.
You know, a good friend of both of ours, Josh Woodbury, him and I have had a little bit of a thing going on for a couple of years. A little bit of a wager going on for the past couple of years. Josh and I are both very big Disney fans, and we're both very big Disney Parks fans as well. And we've both worked at either Disney World or Disneyland. He still works there, actually. And, you know, we're both big fans of that. And he hadn't seen Pirates of the Caribbean. And I'm like, this is the OG parks to film adaptation that works. I mean, this is the biggest, maybe not the OG, I don't know if I could say it that way, but it is the biggest parks to film adaptation that Disney's ever made, and this guy hasn't seen it, and he's one of the biggest Disney fans I know. So we made a wager because he knows that I have seen very little horror movies, and he also knows, you know, we know each other pretty well. He knows my taste. He knows what kind of movies I like, and so he wanted me to watch the Scream movies, and so I watched the first Scream movie. I can't even remember. It was over a year ago, but I will say when I watched it, I absolutely loved it, and I consider that to be my favorite horror movie. Like, I really, really loved it. I was all in, and I haven't watched any of the others.
But
And
now has to he has to go 1 for 1, right? Like that's part of the deal here.
Yeah, well, I mean, to my recollection, it's his turn to watch Pirates of the Caribbean 2, and then I will watch Scream 2 when that time comes. But that being said,
let the record show.
That's what I remember. Maybe I'm wrong. He's probably, if he listens to this, Josh, you're probably going to call me out. Sorry. But, I think that's the main one that I have been told to watch, that I want to watch also is the Scream movies. But when I think about other movies in horror that I really latched onto, the Quiet Place films are really, really great. Another example, I feel like The Quiet Place or John Krasinski and Jordan Peele kind of mirrored each other in a way. These comedy actors who tried to dive into horror filmmaking from a directorial standpoint and writing. I believe, did John Krasinski write the Quiet Place films?
I think he at least he had a story credit or co-production, or I can't remember.
That's always been very interesting to me, is as I began to watch horror more and be more interested in horror, and as I sort of kind of began to dive into the genre, was also the time that these two filmmakers were sort of making this career change from comedy actors, to horror filmmakers, which is a drastic career change in a lot of ways, or at the very least an unexpected one, even though horror and comedy are actually very similar in a lot of ways in terms of the way they make an audience feel and how they are presented and how they're written into certain films, certain scripts. That being said, I've been very intrigued to watch the filmography of these two guys, because I really haven't disliked any movies that they've put out. Another favorite horror movie that comes to mind immediately is Jordan Peele's Nope. That movie is my favorite Jordan Peele movie. I listen to the score of that movie all the time. It's beautiful to look at. I saw it twice in theaters. And again, a horror movie with jump scares. Yeah. And I don't like any jump scares at all, but if it can build up the tension in a way that if the tension is plot related, if I'm invested in what's going on, and if I'm on the edge of my seat because I want to know what happens next, but not on the edge of my seat because I think a jump scare is coming, that is when I'm more interested.
It builds too. It's atmospheric. It's creepy but it's not selling itself short of the movie it wants to be at the same time. And that's what I really appreciate about his movies, is he doesn't hold back from any of the ideas he wants to get across or try. And that's what Nope did on the biggest scale he's done to date. Like, it's, the biggest budgeted movie he's done so far. And I cannot wait to see what this untitled 4th Jordan Peele movie that's dated for next Christmas, if it doesn't move because of the strikes and everything. I wonder what that's going to be. He just keeps evolving as a filmmaker.
One thing that always has been of interest to me, especially since I began to appreciate horror a little bit more than I had beforehand, is when other films that aren't horror movies will kind of dive in and include certain elements or certain aspects. Like, it's maybe this is hypocritical. I don't understand the thought process behind it, but it's just the way my mind works. I would much rather, in many cases, I really enjoy and like a good jump scare in a non-horror movie more than I do in a horror movie. Because when I see it in a non-horror movie, what comes to mind immediately is Multiverse of Madness, when Wanda jumps out from behind the corner, and that, Raimi, obviously his roots were as a horror filmmaker, and he had his fingerprints all over that film, Multiverse of Madness. And that moment to me was like, oh my gosh, that was so cool. When they do
the Evil Dead movies.
I know. And that's another one. That's another one on the list of movies that I've been told to watch. The list goes on and on in horror. But I really do enjoy when films that aren't horror movies are not presented or billed to be horror movies. We'll throw in a jump scare every now and then, throw in some gore. You think of Spider-Man 2, the scene where Doc Ock's arms come to life and kill everybody in the hospital, or Aquaman and the trench and everything they do in that scene.
Right.
I mean, there's some really interesting stuff when a horror filmmaker goes out of his way to include horror in a film that is not a horror film. I have always really, really appreciated that. And I think that, you know, the two examples that come to mind are James Wan and Sam Raimi in that regard.
I think you're really going to enjoy the work of John Carpenter. His movies...
I've seen the first scene of the first Halloween.
Oh, how can you stop? How can you stop?
I've heard the main title theme, of course. I love it. I have seen in full Halloween Kills.
Okay, why? No, I'm just kidding.
I didn't like it. At the time, I was going with someone who wanted to go see it, and there was the movie they wanted to see, and I was like, all right, whatever, I'll go. Why not? You know, I haven't seen any of the others, but why not? And I quickly learned
you're gonna
why
watch
not.
Halloween.
It was awful. It was not good.
You're gonna watch Halloween
terrible.
and you're gonna realize, where have they gone? Like, this is why have they evolved way past what the roots of?
I know it's this
first movie
iconic franchise, this iconic character in Michael Myers, and I know all of that. And because of that, when I was watching Halloween Kills, the only one I've seen, I was like, this is bad. Like, it was just bad. Like, it wasn't even bad on purpose. It wasn't trying to be quirky. It wasn't trying to be a different, you know, it wasn't leaning into its silliness. It was playing bad moments super seriously. I did not like that movie. It's what I call,
it straddles the line of thinking it's neither serious enough for me to take it seriously, it's neither campy enough for me to totally have a blast just enjoying
exactly
it's
in that weird middle ground, and I don't like the middle ground.
But anyways, back to what I was saying about John Carpenter.
Absolutely.
The Thing is my favorite horror movie of all time, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. It's a young Kurt Russell. We're in Antarctica. It's partly a mystery of them trying to figure out what's going on. It's just a total blast of a movie. The score is amazing. It's one of the most beautiful shot movies I've ever seen in my entire life. Just
I've heard really good things about it.
You're going to really enjoy it, and I cannot wait to talk about it on the podcast sometime. I just actually watched it this past week, and I got to show, ironically, my parents had not seen the 1982 masterpiece, The Thing. And they're like, oh, this movie's so old. And I was like, where were you? Why didn't you guys see that? And it's like, so I got to show them, and my mom was she was getting, there's not really jump scares. I can't even explain it. It's just a different brand of horror. And there's a lot of gore in this movie. And so anytime there was gore in this movie, my mom would freak out. It was so funny to watch her just react to the events unfolding. But yeah, overall, The Thing is my favorite horror movie. I still have a lot. I've seen a lot of the core stuff, but I still need to watch a bunch of the Scream movies, a bunch of the Halloween movies, a bunch of the other core franchises and sort of cult classics that I haven't got to yet. But yeah, I try to keep up every year, try to make an October watch list. I think I failed miserably this year, but that's okay.
Well, because you didn't fail in one aspect.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, I think you were about to segue. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, we both watched a new movie this week.
We did.
What did we watch, Preston?
We watched Trick or Treat, and what an interesting movie that was. I mean, honestly, you know, this is... I had a really good time with it. I liked this movie a lot. I thought it was creative. It was interesting. It was so Halloween-y. I don't know how else to describe it. It had all of the Halloween classics: ghosts, vampires, zombies, murderers, possessed children, witches, pumpkins, a metric ton of pumpkins, so many pumpkins everywhere in this movie. Costumes, werewolves, it had everything. And I clowns too. There was a moment I was taking notes and I was like, there's so much Halloween stuff in this movie. Is there a clown coming? And then, you know, of course, 20 minutes later, I found the clowns. I found them. There they are. You
know those Halloween books you had as a kid that had like the one creepy, like all the tropes that we see here, like like one creepy house and like all the different things and the trick-or-treaters, and it all starts the same. And I love that this movie like combines all of those elements, puts them in a blender, and then like tells this like non-linear story of like these 4 different things, and then it all comes together and you're like, wait, what did I just watch? Like that. It's kind of and it just keeps getting. What I love about this movie is it keeps getting more absurd. Like by the time we get to Logan Roy, Brian Cox from Succession, in the fighting the pumpkin kid, I'm just having the time of my life. I'm like, this fight just keeps going on. This guy's stabbing his ankles. He's like trying. Like there is so much going on, and he can't kill this thing. And oh man, what was your favorite? Just like of the 4 like kind of main storylines, which of the kind of stories did you gravitate most or found most interesting, or just like some of the elements that popped out to you?
You know, I have to, I don't know if it's like my favorite storyline per se, but it is one of my favorite moments that I need to mention. I'd be remiss if I didn't.
Please do.
There's a moment, I can't remember like the context of it very well, but it's one of the funniest jokes I have ever heard, because this movie is funny. And that's what I appreciate. If a horror movie can be funny too, I love it. I love when horror movies can add some comedy, add some brevity, because a lot of horror movies are so dark, and like they can still be good when they're that way, but it can be also kind of an exhausting watch sometimes. You get out and you're like, oh my God, it was really good.
This felt like Scooby-Doo in the best way possible. Like I felt like I was on a Scooby-Doo mission in the best way. Yeah.
It was great for all those reasons. And one of the funniest jokes I've heard in any movie ever. It's out of nowhere, I think. When it happened, I don't think that there was any context leading up to it, but somebody calls 911 and the operator answers, goes, 911, please hold.
Yes, yeah, that's Brian Cox at the end. He calls 911.
Like,
and he said, they go, please hold. He goes, what?
So what is, like, that's just such a random, like, out of nowhere, like, just a funny thing to imagine.
And then the hand on the floor.
Yeah.
The hand as that's happening, the hand on the floor that he had just chopped off starts moving and then comes and stabs him.
Yeah. This movie is fun in all the ways that again, to bring up Halloween Kills, I think that this has a little bit of camp in it that maybe Halloween Kills was going for, or if they weren't going for, they should have gone for one way or another. Yeah, absolutely. No, I really liked one of the initial scenes that it gives us with Mr. Wilkins killing this kid, basically. And the way this scene was executed was so impressive. He kills this kid, and then his own kid is in the window saying, Dad,
he's in on it.
Yeah. How crazy was that? And what a unique, what a creative way to do that. I mean, they really make it seem, but they don't ever explicitly give away that the kid isn't in on it, right? They make it seem like the dad is trying to hide something. He's convinced
them otherwise.
Yeah, and they really make it seem like that, but they never actually guarantee that. They never like confirm that the dad is trying to hide it, but they really lean into it, and it really seems like it. And then all of a sudden, the way they edit it, when he goes into the basement, it seems like he's about to kill his own kid. And it's like, oh my God, what's going on? And then he stabs down, and you think, okay, clearly they're either going to reveal that he actually just stabbed the pumpkin, ha ha ha, all good.
Or he stabbed his head, and it's a reversal of a reversal.
Yeah, or he stabbed his own son's head. Psych, it's neither. How cool is that? He stabbed the dead body's head. Yeah, he stabbed the kid's head, not his own kid, but the kid he'd already killed. He stabbed the dead head with his kid's help. Like, that was such a cool like way to do that. And I remember that was the moment when I was hooked. That was the moment when I was like, oh, that was awesome. Like, that was really creative how they went about that to reveal that this little kid is in on the murder of another kid. And the way they led up to it, that the execution of that was done so well that I was like, all right, I'm in. This was great.
It was the same thing for me with the husband and wife at the beginning, where he goes upstairs, and just the comedy of that whole thing where she's taking down the Halloween decorations on Halloween night. And then this whole thing throughout the movie of like betraying the spirits on Halloween. And like, if you knock over a jack-o'-lantern, one of the funniest like cuts in this movie is when Brian Cox opens the door, or he checks the door, there's nothing there. And then there's another knock, and he opens his door again, and there's like 500 jack-o'-lanterns outside his house.
Yeah.
And he's like, what? he just has the best like raspy voice. It's so good.
It's really good.
There's all these little comedic things, but you're right. Like, it has like these like twists and turns that I really enjoy. Like the werewolf club, essentially. You think they're just like going out on the town to have a good time, and then you have the younger sister, and you're like, oh, seems like, you know, kind of just a teen comedy, classic high school movie situation. Nope. They're really talking about being werewolves and being initiated into which one is going to eat this person at this campfire. And then what I love about it is if you go over to the other story of the kids in the whole bus scenario,
which was
you hear the werewolves, and she goes, oh, werewolves. And then later on that happens, and I'm like, oh, everything's connected in like the coolest way. Like, it's not like trying to fully connect. It's just like everything is happening on Halloween night. And the bus scenario was creepy.
That flashback scene was probably my favorite scene in the whole movie, was the flashback of the bus and that happening. I mean, what struck me and what sticks with me is that final shot at the end of the bus flashback scene when all of the masks start to float up and hit the top of the water.
Dude, yeah.
What a cool shot that was. That is, if that's not iconic Halloween imagery, that's imagery 101. Like that is it was just awesome. It was just
I love a good
image to look at. I mean, it was just perfect. Like, and it was creative. It was new to me, at least. I don't know. Maybe other horror movies have done it. Obviously I haven't seen all the horror movies, but it was cool. I hadn't seen many movies do that, and it was just like, oh, that's terrifying and creative, and it was just cool. It was a cool shot.
I love a good creepy, like, old elevator that they have to go down. Like, I don't know why. I'm just like, yes.
I love a good
get in the creepy elevator. Let's go. No, but the whole scene, how it plays out, like, is just so funny to me, because the kid is like the poor kid gets in the front sleeping. He's like, I want to go home. And the whole time I was thinking, this would be a good, I hope this email finds you well. And then like how the email finds you meme of the kid just pushing the bus off the cliff. And I'm like, this is how this email finds me. Of course, I'm thinking about how I'm going to meme this poor kid as he's sending the bus over the cliff. Yeah. But that was some creepy stuff, man, of like, and again, we talk about how this movie subverts everything. You have the kids planning, the four kids in present day plan to go scare this girl. They scare her, and then they're trying to be like, oh, the joke is up. The joke is up. No. This isn't part of it. This isn't part of it. And I loved it. Like that back and forth kept going.
Yeah.
And man, just some sinister horror stuff as she's rising up in the elevator.
Yeah.
Again, you can hear the squelching sounds.
Such a classic Halloween movie. It incorporates so many, I mean, it checks every box, but you talk about subverting expectations, and I always think the idea of subverting expectations in a film is very interesting to me, because a lot of times people will say, oh, the plot was predictable, that means it was bad. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's true. But also, a lot of people will say, oh, it did some things I didn't expect, that means it was good. Not quite. The art of subverting the audience's expectations in a way that you have earned and in a way that is gratifying to the audience is so difficult. That's why I'm not a writer. It's why I don't write movies, because that, to me, it's so interesting, because there's so many movies that you see, and then when they do a plot twist and you're like, what the heck is that? What do you mean? Like, no, there's so many plot twists. How many times have you seen a plot twist where you're just like, all right, no, like that can't work. And it takes you out of the movie immediately. That happens all the time. And so when you can subvert expectations even once or twice in a movie in a way that feels earned and in a way that when the audience sees it, they're going to say, oh, that was cool. Oh, I didn't expect that. Wow. Oh, interesting. That adds a whole new element to this story, to this film. You know, when you can subvert expectations in that way, it's always impressive to me, because it's so difficult to do that, to earn the outcome of a piece of your plot, to earn the outcome that you end up with, while also leading the audience in a different way.
Yeah.
You know, leading the audience in a way that they think something else is going to happen. That's always very interesting to me and very impressive to me. And this movie does it over and over and over again. And to do it as much as they do is what impressed me quite a lot, is how many times they subverted expectations in ways that didn't take me out of the movie, didn't make me feel, oh, well, that doesn't make any sense. Every time they subverted the expectations, I was like, oh, yeah, that's crazy. Whoa, I didn't see that coming, but it makes sense. And that makes this movie, whatever the reveal is, makes it all the more better, makes it all cool, all the more cooler, makes it more intriguing. You know, things like that. I just can really appreciate when a film can subvert my expectations in a way that, instead of taking me out of the film and making me feel like I am no longer invested because they've done something that is completely out of what I've expected to come, out of the ordinary, instead of taking me out of a film, pulling me in further, making me more engaged. And I feel like this film did that over and over again. And I can't say how high of a praise that is, because there are so movies that try to do that and fail miserably.
Yeah, this movie's like the perfect level. Like, this movie's like when you have the perfect amount of something, you feel like you're full, the perfect level of full, the perfect level of how many drinks you had that night. You're like, this is the best. Any more of it would have been like pretty horrible. Any less of it would have been like, I want more. This movie somehow creates its entire structure around like keeping you on this razor thin edge, but also fun, also funny, and also getting all of these stereotypical horror elements, Halloween elements, and creating this sort of roller coaster ride around town, this adventure around town, around like this giant ensemble cast. That's what I think is so cool about this too. There's not like one main character. It's like we get on board with all these different people, and it's able to keep things fresh and keep you engaged without a single main protagonist, which I think is pretty cool. And it's only 82 minutes, and it's paced so well.
It is so short. And that was one thing that stuck out to me, was there was a moment where I got a phone call about 20 minutes into the movie, I think, and I felt like I had just started the movie. Like, it felt like I was 5 minutes in, to be honest, which is a compliment. It was paced very well, but because it only felt like I was about 5 minutes in when I was 20. And I got a call, so I had to pause the movie. And when I remember pausing it, thinking, I don't know how long this call is going to go. I don't know, when am I going to get to go back into the movie? And I saw that there was only an hour left. And I was like, what? Like, I hadn't looked at the runtime of the film before playing it. I hadn't looked. I just
Did you watch it on HBO Max like I did?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, when I saw it was an hour, I was like, oh, I can talk all night. You know, like I can talk on this phone call because I only have an hour left. You know, your analogy of drinking is interesting to me because and it's true. Like, it is. It's just the perfect amount where if you had a little bit more, you know, you'd probably end up making some decisions you regret. You'd wake up hungover and you'd look back on the night poorly and you'd think, I didn't have fun that night. But if you had a little bit less, you might have not had as much fun as your friends that you're out with. So it was just it hit that perfect spot that you need to be in. And yeah, I really, really liked it. And I've only seen so many horror movies, obviously, and I tend to try to avoid the horror movies that have not been profusely recommended to me by people who I trust, which this is one of them. And so when I do get into them, when I do watch a horror movie, I would imagine on my like Letterboxd, when you can sort the films you've seen through genres, horror is definitely probably number one, the smallest genre on my Letterboxd. But number two, even though it's the smallest, it probably has the highest like star ranking out of any genre in my Letterboxd. If I had to guess, I don't have the stats, but I would imagine that I've rated horror movies higher on average because I really try to avoid all of the bad horror movies. Whereas if a new Marvel movie comes out and I don't think it's going to be good, I will be there opening night regardless, which it's like a sickness of mine. But like I'm
another
addicted.
podcast for another time.
Yeah. How many times do we talk about how we can talk about Marvel on another episode? Anyways, we need to just have a Marvel podcast, a Zolly Pod MCU show.
We maybe don't even need to release it. I think it'd just be good for our mental health. Get it out and just move on.
We don't even need to record anything. I'm just going to call you at some point. Actually, after this episode, we're going to stay on this Zoom call for like 3 hours and rant about Marvel so that for the next episode, we don't do that. But yeah, no,
what I just looked up is this movie was a direct to DVD movie. I didn't know that.
I did not know that. Really?
And so, yeah, I'm just scrolling down. It got a theatrical release for the first time in 2022 because of the cult following of it.
Wow.
That's so it had really interesting. Film festival.
Well, that ties into the one thing I haven't talked about it that I wanted to mention. It feels very low budget, but not in a bad way. It feels low budget, but in a way that feels real. Like this feels like I'm watching a real movie. Whereas when I watch a lot of shows and movies in this day and age, even, it doesn't have to be the superhero movie with CGI all over the place. It can be the latest rom-com with Chris Evans and Ana de Armas, and I don't even know if they're in the same room.
It doesn't
together,
feel like descript production. It feels like they like that opening shot, I think, of the kid like dragging the bag and then through that whole parade, and like it looks like a real town. Like I think this movie was filmed in Vancouver and they did a really phenomenal job. Like
you can tell there's very minimal like VFX on this movie, and probably because they had a low budget, and even the VFX they use, they're not great, but like I don't care because the rest is really, really good. The story is great. And it feels very tangible and it feels very real. And I can appreciate that quite a lot because in this day and age, in 2023, there are so many movies and shows that don't feel like they are happening in a real life place. They don't feel like they're happening in somewhere that the actors actually are in that setting. There's just a lot of green screen that's used in mundane scenes where you could do it on a practical set in this day and age that it's just the way the industry has gone. And to see a movie like this that's low budget, everything very clearly presumably shot on location, everything just looks very real and very tangible and tactile, and it just looks like somebody got a camera and shot a movie. Obviously a very nice camera, but it feels like something that people made. And it doesn't feel like something that 1,000,001 people had to come together to make, which obviously probably it did happen that way. That's how all movies are. But that being said, it feels very much like a legit.
Yeah, in the moment of its production. Yeah,
exactly.
Good stuff. I really enjoyed this movie. Guess we'll have to continue to take recommendations from our friend Josh, because you guys should go check out their commentary of it. I believe they have a commentary from last Halloween up on this movie on Where Heartbreak Feels Good. Check out their YouTube channel for that fun stuff.
And go comment on all of their videos that Josh should watch Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Man's Chest if he wants me to watch Scream 2. Do that for us.
He should just complete the trilogy before we take any of his valid opinions.
I think what I need to do is I just need to just binge watch the rest of the Scream movies. Like I think that I need to just go through all of them and be like, hey, your turn. Then he has no choice. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed Trick or Treat. Thought it was a great movie, and I'm enjoying every time I get to go a little bit more into the horror genre, which Trick or Treat was an opportunity to do that. And I really, really enjoy it. So I had a good time. Carson, are there any thoughts, anything on this movie that you didn't get to mention that you would like to now before we wrap things up?
Oh my gosh, yes. I just remembered something.
I'm glad I asked.
We needed to bring up the fate of the news guys from the beginning of the movie. They were really having a great night, and it all went to shit.
As things tend to in movies like this.
Are you scared for your career path, being in a news van after you've been taken by werewolves to a sketchy Halloween party? Do you foresee that happening too?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I think this was a pivotal moment for me in my career, because I think I'm gonna be switching career paths. This is my official announcement, because I do not want to end up like those guys. This has scared me into becoming a full-time, I don't know, I'll think about that. A full-time something else, but I'm quitting my job because of this. I'm too scared. If anyone from my job is listening, I am not quitting my job. But that being said, as a newsman.
Unless you're a werewolf and I don't know it, that could be a horrible fate that I could just be putting you into right now.
And that could be a whole podcast on its own, just like Marvel. On that note, I think we are going to wrap things up. Thank you for listening to this episode of Zollipod. If you don't follow us on social media, please do so. Check our description on the episode. Wherever you're watching this, you can find links to our accounts on Facebook, Twitter, Threads, Instagram, all the good stuff. We post all of our content there. Follow us there and let us know what you want to see from this show coming up. We really appreciate it. Would love to, spooky season is on the tail end, but I'd love to get into some more spooky stuff outside of the months of September and October. I think it's very, very feasible that we could do that. So if you would like us to watch any horror movies that we maybe haven't seen, it seems like that might be the genre that Carson and I are both the most new to, at least. So if you have any of those, let us know and we will do that, and we'll record an episode on it, and we'll get some new episodes out for you. But make sure you have that bell notifications on and follow us on social media, and we will see you next time, and we will see you at the movies.